Hey everyone, it's Lisa, and today I'm going to talk about the 5 things I wish I had done differently when applying to medical school. If only we could go back in time, right? I wish I was the kind of person who lived their life without regrets, but instead I'm the kind of person that wishes I could go back and change things in pretty much every aspect of my life. So today I thought I'd do a very quick video about the 5 things that I wish I could change about going through med school applications. So number 5, I wish I had applied to more places, or maybe different places. So the average number of places that people apply for medical school in the US is 16, and I applied to 21. 4 of those were in Ireland, and the rest were in the States. But it turns out I didn't get any interviews in the US, and I only got 1 interview in Ireland and my 1 acceptance there. And I think I just really chose the programs based on location or my interest in the program rather than my competitiveness at that program, if that makes sense. So I think if I could go back and do it again, I would really consider what a program is looking for in their applicants and how competitive I actually am, and maybe choose different places. Or maybe add more. Maybe 21 wasn't my number. Maybe a few more might have given me a bit more of an edge in the US. So obviously I'll never know. I can't go back and try again at this point. I'm too far in. But definitely something that I wish I had considered a little more when applying. So that brings us to number 4. On top of doing more research into the programs, I wish I had done more research into the application process of applying to medical school, as well as actually going through medical school and what that entailed. I was not aware of all of the steps that it takes to get into medical school, as well as all of the exams you have to take in medical school, the things you learn, all of that stuff. And there's plenty of information out there. I just didn't read it. And if I could go back and tell myself at 20 what I ought to be doing, I should have done more research. So I'm actually going to link below the link to the AAMC website, which is the American Academy of Medical Colleges or something like that. But the link will be down below because they have a ton of information about applying to medical school, about going through medical school, about residency. I just didn't bother to look at any of it. So if I could go back and do that again, I would, and be a little more well-informed going into the process as well as starting med school. So that brings us to number 3, which I actually considered making number 2 or even number 1 because it really is that important. But consider your prospects of matching back to the United States as an IMG. That's an international medical graduate for those of you who don't speak the lingo yet. But as an international medical graduate, even if you're from the US, it is more difficult to get back at home into residency. It's just a fact. It's harder to do. And I, although knowing this, didn't really consider it before agreeing to go to Ireland or even applying to Ireland. It wasn't really something on my radar. I think residency seemed so far away at the time. It was easy to brush off as future Lisa's problem. Well, now future Lisa is not that happy that I didn't think about this before the process. Now, mind you, it matters more if you're looking for a more competitive specialty. Think about surgery, dermatology. I'm sure there's more competitive specialties, but those 2 are the only 2 that are coming to me. But if you're trying to be in a competitive specialty, being a US IMG, being an IMG at all, is definitely going to be a disadvantage. It's going to be harder to do. Doesn't mean you can't do it. There are plenty of people every year who do. But it's definitely something to consider. I would like to do family med. About 50% of residents in family medicine, now that's my own figure off the top of my head here, but about 50% are international medical graduates. So I definitely have a better shot than, say, someone trying to go to ortho would. But definitely something I wish I had considered way before I got to this point. So that brings us to number 2, which is my biology foundation. Now, I know that's not a question, that's not a statement, it just is biology foundation, and I just thought I had one and I didn't. So I think this applies more to those of us who are not traditional med applicants, those of us who have some other degree. I studied kinesiology, which is exercise science, and took some extra classes to be able to apply to medical school, including some biochemistry, some chemistry, and I assumed, first mistake right there, but I assumed that if I was prepared to apply for medical school, then I was prepared for medical school. I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. I think the idea that, well, if I have enough biology to apply, I should have enough biology to make it through is good logic, but it's wrong. It's just false. And it was very evident my first year that I did not have a strong biology foundation. It was very evident taking my board exams that I did not have a very strong biology foundation. And in fact, I failed my first board exam. I did. And the only reason we could figure out was that I don't have a very strong biology foundation. So I ended up doing supplemental teaching at school. Like I said, I still failed that board exam, and it ended up taking me twice as long to be able to take it and pass as my classmates did. So it is something to consider whether or not you are fundamentally prepared to handle the workload that comes with medicine. And if you have the biology background, that when you get there, it's mostly review with a few extra things instead of entirely new subjects like immunology that I'd never seen before. I think, again, this applies more to those of us who aren't pre-med backgrounds, but definitely something I wish I had personally done differently. And here we are, we made it. Here's number one. The number one thing that I would go back and change if I could, if I only had one thing I could change, it would be this. And it would be not to underestimate application stress. Now, I'm not saying any of this to scare anybody, but this is a very real thing, and we don't talk about it a lot, is how much stress applications actually put us under. This is a little hard to talk about, but I think it's really important as healthcare providers that we are open about our own stress and anxiety and the struggles that we go through in medical schools. So that way, our future colleagues that are entering medical school can be more prepared, or in this case, entering the application cycle. You apply to however many schools, in my case 21, and then suddenly get bombarded with essays upon essays upon essays as secondary applications. I would work a full day and come home and try to write 3 essays. I would wake up in the middle of the night worried about my application. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't sleeping. I was crying all the time about dumb things that I would never cry about. I'm not really a crier. But during that 6 weeks, I'd say about September to mid-October, was the hardest time of my whole life. Even now that I've gone through medical school, I consider those 6 weeks the hardest 6 weeks of my life. And not necessarily just because of the application, but because I wasn't prepared for the extra stress. I think I went into this time period thinking that it was no big deal. The actual application was submitted, so the rest of it would be fine. But it turns out that's just not the case. And I really needed to prioritize my own self-care, my own well-being, and I didn't. But now, having had that experience, I definitely have come out of it a stronger person in the sense that I am more able to draw boundaries and say, this is my own self-care, this is my own self-time. Even in my first year of med school, where everybody's stressed up to their eyeballs, I was able to do that and say, no, I come first, my mental health comes first, and that's a priority I need to have in my life. So definitely something I learned from, but if I could go back and save myself the trouble, I absolutely would. I really hope that anybody who is watching this and starting the application cycle themselves, that hopefully you will learn from my mistake and be a little kinder to yourself. Okay guys, that's it. Those are the 5 biggest regrets I have while applying to med school, and hopefully by sharing this, some of you won't regret as much during your application cycle, and you'll all give yourself a little space and a little kindness during this time. So if you have any questions about anything, leave me a comment below. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!